In breaking news yesterday, Elon Musk just revealed that the very first human has now received an implant from Neuralink. He added that initial results show promising neuron spike detection and the patient is recovering well. This first Neuralink product is called Telepathy, and while initial users will be those who have lost their limbs, the potential for this technology is immense. This will enable users to control their phone or computer just by thinking. And if you let your imagination loose a little bit, it's not hard to realize this is a moment in history that can really change the world. Today, we're going to watch a number of videos to dive deeper into all of this. And to join us, we've got Hans Nelson. You've got to check out his YouTube channel called Hans C. Nelson. And he's really somebody I turn to for AI, for tech, and for dojo and supercomputers, and of course, tech like this. Welcome, Hans.
Thanks for having me, Herbert.
This is a fun one. It's a big deal. This is Elon announcing Neuralink. So yesterday, he basically said the first human received an implant from Neuralink and is recovering well. Initial results show promising neuron spike detection. Then he adds that this first product is called Telepathy. We're going to also talk about the other products that they're working on. But this one enables the control of your phone or computer and through them almost any device just by thinking. Initial users will be those who have lost the use of their limbs. And he said, imagine if Stephen Hawking could communicate faster than a speed typist or auctioneer. That's the goal. So this is the official Neuralink post, and they've got a video which we'll watch. It's called Prime Study. Let's watch this, and then we'll get you to react to it.
Hello. We're thrilled to introduce Neuralink's Prime Study, the first clinical trial of a groundbreaking experimental device that could help transform the lives of people with paralysis. Imagine the joy of connecting with your loved ones, browsing the web, or even playing games using only your thoughts. This is made possible by placing a small, cosmetically invisible implant in a part of your brain that plans movements. The device is designed to interpret your neural activity so you can operate a computer or a smartphone by simply thinking about moving. No wires or physical movement are required. By participating in the Prime study, you'd be helping to redefine the boundaries of human capability. If you've been living with quadriplegia from a spinal cord injury or with ALS, you may qualify for the Prime study. We'd love to share more with you and get you on board. Visit our website today to learn more and to submit your application. We'll be supporting you with a dedicated team at every step on this revolutionary journey. Your courage and contribution could significantly shape the future of interaction and independence, not just for you, but for countless others.
All right, so it sounds like it's very important. To tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, this is really exciting for me personally. One of the big things that led me into the entire Tesla and Elon space was reading the Wait But Why blogs back in the day when Tim Urban was really going deep down the rabbit hole. And, he did pieces on Elon himself, he did Tesla, he did SpaceX, but he also did Neuralink. And the one on Neuralink was really crazy and kind of mind boggling. And, one of the things that Tim Urban says is really this is potentially Elon's most ambitious project. And so, that was something that Tim worked on, I think it was back in 2016 or 2017. And we've been waiting for, Neuralink to really make progress in this area. And they've shown really great things in the validation of the technology. But this is the first time now we've actually got that technology put into humans. And so the idea is that they can cut a very small piece of the skull out, and then they can fit that big round chunk and it's not that big. It's, a couple of millimeters deep and, I think roughly the size of a quarter in diameter. And they can put that into where the skull is and just sit it right there underneath the skin. So you'd have hair and everything would heal up just like normal. And then they can place wires that are individual electrodes in next to neurons that control specific things. And, through neuroscience, we pretty much have a good idea of where the brain activity is located that controls certain things. And so we know, what are the neurons that control fingers? What are the neurons that control movements of the wrist and the hand and all of these things? And so what they can do is they can go in and they can put these little electrodes in next to those neurons. And when he talked about there's promising results on neural spike detection, what he's talking about is they're being able to sense with that electrode next to the neuron the fact that that neuron has just fired. And through this detection of what neurons are firing and where the activity is, that's how they're able to sense what someone's intentions are. And then through that, they have a whole bunch of complicated AI and software layer that's on top of that. But basically, they can create computer and digital controls based on just the thoughts that we have in our mind. And so that's what the Neuralink project is. We've seen the results of, the monkey being able to play Pong just with his brain. And they're taking the technology that they've developed to do that. And now we're working on solving some really big challenges for people. And so we're working on um, people who are paralyzed. We're working on people who have various ailments. One of the other things that they can look at is potentially restoring sight for people who are blind or hearing for people who are deaf, that we can use these devices to bridge if there's, if the reason that someone doesn't have a capability is because there's damage to your nerves somewhere. If you had like a spinal injury or say, yeah, if you for whatever reason were born without arms, or if you had had an accident and you had lost limbs, that if you're talking about your hands and the thing that you would use to control a computer or a cell phone, then you can still be able to achieve those results of controlling those devices without actually having to use your hands and fingers, because you can just interface with the device directly. And so it's really incredible what the potential of this is. Obviously, there's also lots to be concerned about. We've got all of these really important use cases where we're going to be solving problems or diseases that people have. And those are going to be the areas where Neuralink can also solve the safety and security challenges that kind of go along with this technology. And so we'll have quite a ramp to where we figure out, whatever the concerning implications of this are, we can try and attack those problems early on in very limited use cases.
Okay, yeah, there's a lot to cover here. So let's break it down, right? So first, let's find out exactly how this works. Number one. Two, that this is telepathy. So this is the ability for somebody who's lost their limbs to be able to control computers and phones just by thinking of it. And you can control a mouse. But then what you were saying also is that it could be also helping people with paralysis. So if you're paralyzed, let's say you can't move your hands, but your brain neurons can actually control, they connect it to the neurons in the arm. And then the other thing that can happen is, and Elon has talked about this, right? Robotic arms. And so you've seen Optimus with its robotic arms. And maybe if you don't have limbs, you put that in and you can actually control and find motor dexterity. So let's just quickly look at this again. And this logo for Neuralink is the way that the waveform, the neural, that's when it spikes, when it fires, that's the waveform, which is really cool. And then as we watch this, this is like the ability for, you to control. And I don't know if they sped this up or not, but it's apparently going to be faster. Like you said, a speed typist. And this is what it looks like, you said, very small, less than a quarter. Now, there you go. It looks like a quarter goes into the brain, but it's just all those fine, all the, what do you call threads? And each thread connects to a neuron in the brain. And the breakthrough is that they are able to connect those threads to so many thousand neurons in the brain, and that's what the difference is. It's right connecting directly to the brain, number one, and then two, it's thousands. And then they've created a computer system that can, a surgical implant that can do it so quickly that it won't damage any part of your brain. And then here it looks like that they're still really searching for more patients to be part of this clinical trial. And that's why I let it run, because if somebody watching this video and knows somebody, they should apply to do this. So you mentioned Tim Urban earlier. Here's a video of him being interviewed by Lex Friedman. Let's watch a little bit more of this. He explains a little more of the background because, like you said, he did a deep dive with Elon.
So, what are your thoughts about like all those years later about Neuralink? Do you find this idea like what excites you about it? Is it the big long-term philosophical things? Is it the practical things? Do you think it's super difficult to do on the neurosurgery side and the material engineering, the robotics side? Or do you think the machine learning side for the brain-computer interfaces where they get to learn about each other, all that kind of stuff? I would just love to get your thoughts because you're one of the people that really considered this problem, really studied it, our
Yeah.
brain-computer interfaces.
I mean, I'm super excited about it. I really think it's actually Elon's most ambitious thing, more than colonizing Mars, because that's just a bunch of people going somewhere, even though it's somewhere far. Neuralink is changing what a person is, eventually. Now, I think that Neuralink engineers and Elon himself would all be the first to admit that it is a maybe that whether they can do their goals here. I mean, it is so crazy ambitious to try to, their eventual goals are, of course, in the interim, they have a higher probability of accomplishing smaller things, which are still huge, like basically solving paralysis, strokes, Parkinson, things like that. I mean, it can be unbelievable. And, anyone who doesn't have one of these things, like we might, everyone should be very happy about, this kind of helping with different disabilities. But the thing that is like, so the grand goal is this augmentation, where you take someone who's totally healthy and you put a brain machine interface in anyway to give them superpowers. It's the possibilities if they can do this, if they can really, so, they've already shown that they are for real with, they've created this robot. Elon talks about like, it should be like LASIK, where it shouldn't be something that needs a surgeon. This shouldn't just be for rich people who have waited in line for 6 months. It should be for anyone who can afford LASIK, and eventually, hopefully, something that isn't covered by insurance, or something that anyone can do. Something this big a deal should be something that anyone can afford eventually. And when we have this, again, I'm talking about a very advanced phase down the road. So maybe a less advanced phase, maybe right now, if you think about when you listen to a song, what's happening is, do you actually hear the sound? Well, not really. It's that the sound is coming out of the speaker. The speaker is vibrating. It's vibrating air molecules. Those air molecules, get vibrated all the way to your head, the pressure wave, and then it vibrates your eardrum. Your eardrum is really the speaker now in your head that then vibrates bones and fluid, which then stimulates neurons in your auditory cortex, which give you the perception that you're hearing sound. Now, if you think about that, do we really need to have a speaker to do that? You could just somehow, if you had a little tiny thing that could vibrate eardrums, you could do it that way. That seems very hard. But really what you need, if you go to the very end, but the thing that really needs to happen is your auditory cortex neurons need to be stimulated in a certain way. If you have a ton of Neuralink things in there, Neuralink electrodes, and they get really good at stimulating things, you could play a song in your head that you hear that is not playing anywhere. There's no sound in the room, but you hear it and no one else could. And it's not like they can get close to your head and hear it. There's no sound. They could not hear anything, but you hear sound. You can turn up. So you open your phone, you have the Neuralink app. You open the Neuralink app, or just Neuralink. So basically you can open your Spotify and you can play to, you can play to your speaker, you can play to your computer, you can play right out of your phone to your headphones, or you now have a new one. You can play into your brain. And this is one of the earlier things. This is, something that seems like really doable. So, no more headphones. I always think it's so annoying because I can leave the house with just my phone, and nothing else, or even just an Apple Watch. But there's always this one thing. I'm like, and headphones. You do need your headphones, right? So I feel like, that'll be the end of that. When there's so many things that you keep going, the ability to think together, you can talk about like super brains. I mean, one of the examples Elon uses is that the low bandwidth of speech. If I go to a movie and I come out of a scary movie and you say, how was it? I said, oh, it was terrifying. Well, what did I just do? I just gave you I had 5 buckets I could have given you. One was horrifying, terrifying, scary, eerie, creepy, whatever. That's about it. And I had a much more nuanced experience than that. And all I have is, these words, right? And so instead I just hand you the bucket. I put the stuff in the bucket and give it to you, but all you have is the bucket. You just have to guess what I put into that bucket. All you can do is look at the label of the bucket and say, when I say terrifying, here's what I mean. So the point is, it's very lossy. I have all this nuanced information of what I thought of the movie, and I'm sending you a very low res package that you're going to now guess what the high res thing looked like. That's language in general. Our thoughts are much more nuanced. If we can think to each other, we can do amazing things. We could have a brainstorm that doesn't feel like, oh, we're not talking in each other's heads. It's not just that I hear your voice. No. We are just thinking. No words are being said internally or externally. The two brains are literally collaborating. It's a skill. I'm sure we'd have to get good at it. I'm sure young kids will be great at it and old people will be bad.
Yeah.
But you think together, and together you have the joint epiphany. And now how about 8 people in a room doing it, right? So it gets, there's other examples. How about when you're a dress designer or a bridge designer and you want to show people what your dress looks like? Well, right now you got to sketch it for a long time. Here, just beam it onto the screen from your head so you can picture it. If you can picture a tree in your head, well, you can just suddenly whatever's in your head, you can be pictured. So we'll have to get very good at it, right? It's going to take a skill, right? You're going to have to, but the possibilities, my God, talk about I feel like if that works, if we really do have that as something, I think it'll almost be like a new ADBC line. It's such a big change that the idea of anyone living before everyone had brain machine interfaces is living in before the common era. It's that level of big change if it can work.
Yeah, and
That's a good place to stop.
Ooh, I am I'm blown away of what the possibilities are.
Yeah, that was one of my questions actually after reviewing that. What comes to mind for you, Herbert? And then we can kind of go from there.
Well, I guess there's 2 things, right? Obviously, this whole idea that I can read other people's minds, and the whole, you're asking me right now, and I have to explain things in words to you. Actually, you should just know what my emotions were, my thinking and went through. But then I'm trying to understand, what does it mean when we are collaborating together as a group? I still think it's going to be much weaker than AI. And I know that this is what Elon is saying. So we need to join AI. So it's one thing for me and you to collaborate together. My brain feels your brain, but eventually I'm going to get, I don't know if it's that much more richer than just the language. That's why I enjoy talking to people. But what I'm going to want to do is talk to the computer and the knowledge. Because, you and I are people who are curious and we like to learn and we devour books and we read articles and we watch videos. If I can download things like that quickly, I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's generally intelligence-wise, it's going to be good.
Well, yeah, we have to go back and remember that a big part of the motivation for Elon to work on this in the first place is because he has had that dread of the possible futures that AI could bring, where, we have these super intelligent artificial intelligence that is so much smarter than we are that it can basically get whatever it wants, and we wouldn't be in a position to be able to stop it. And so one of the hedge your bets things, and this is really why Elon is pursuing this, is that, man, wouldn't it be nice in a world where computers are so smart if we had a much better way to interface with those computers so that we could basically keep up with the computer, and then that he calls it bandwidth. So, when you're typing on your phone, that's very low amount of information that is passing between you and the device that you're using. Now, the other way works a lot better actually. When we listen to things or when we watch visual information, that's pretty high bandwidth. But then from us into our devices, whether it's using a mouse, whether it's typing on a keyboard, whether it's using a cell phone and typing with your thumbs, even when you're just voice typing into something, that's somewhat of a low bandwidth thing. So if we can improve that so that we can put information into the computer as fast as we get information from the computer into our eyes, which are these very specially developed, information processing systems that biology has created over the course of thousands and thousands of years, um, then that really means that you can have an information exchange between you and a computer intelligence at a much, much higher level. And maybe if we are able to do that well enough, then you could have an AI augmentation that you can communicate with fast enough to where you can keep up with it. And so that's really you know, the core of why we really need to do this, you know, even though there's a lot of things that are scary about it, this is why we need to do it anyways, because we just really don't have, a whole lot of options if super intelligence is something that we're going to be contending with in the next 10 to 20 years. Or, even if it's longer than that, we really need to get moving on this problem. But it does have so many other benefits, just like when we went to space, it was a big goal that we had to do. So that's why we really have to do this kind of regardless. But we get so many great benefits by working on this technology along the way, just like we've already talked about, that we can solve a lot of diseases, we can solve a lot of things like paralysis and other challenges that people have. But then from there, we can build into something that is so much more, as we have two-way communications with our devices, we can, near term, before we ever get to super intelligence, we can just be able to use our devices as further extensions of ourselves.
Thank you again so much for that, Hans. This is a very big deal, right? So what we need to do is better understand all the things that it can actually happen, can actually be done, not just the ones we've mentioned now. I'm going to show a video of Elon talking about it being able to solve blindness. But before we do that, here's Rowan Chung, and he says, Elon just revealed the first Neuralink brain chip in a human was completed. Imagine going back in time 10 years and telling people humans would solve telepathy in 2024. This is amazing. And this is what you were talking about, right? There's going to be a shift in the world, not you, but Tim Urban was saying, right? There's a whole new generation of humans happening now. You know what really shocks me is Elon is not a biologist. Yeah, he doesn't know anything about this. He never studied medicine, but it's about first principle thinking, right? He went back and said, is this possible? Can we go directly to, the brain neurons? Why are we trying to do things through the skull? And then he solved the problems of doing that. Too big of a hole. How do you get to attach neurons? And he created this machine and so forth. So it's brilliant. So here's, Elon talking about this way back when he first, like you said, 2018, maybe even earlier than that. Let's watch him.
One has never had vision ever. Like they were born blind. We believe we can still restore vision. Because the visual part of the cortex is still there. Even if they've never seen before, we're confident that they could see.
So I think they're calling that product Vision Link, right? Solving blindness. I don't know if it's going to apply to all blind people. There's certain ones like macular degeneration, maybe, or those kind of things that it can apply to. But imagine that, solving blindness through technology.
Yep. And it's just, doing exactly what we've been talking about, where they're they're connecting the neurons in your head, inside your brain, that are responsible for those tasks to whatever the end thing is that they need to be connected to. And so in this case, it would be attaching
Optical
some sort
nerve.
of cameras. Yeah. And
Mhm.
and you could even think about the fact that if that is the case, you could actually see things that our eyes are not designed to be able to see. You could see wavelengths, you could see,
Yeah.
heat in different ways. Like you can start to extrapolate where this goes. And it's pretty incredible that we can really expand what the human body and the human mind is capable of using this device. And it starts with telepathy, but there's so much more. And just solving telepathy, essentially, telepathy between humans and digital devices is huge. But then it goes far beyond that, because we can give ourselves all new embodied physical capabilities as well.
I think you're young enough, right? Do you know the $6 Million Man? Have you ever watched that show?
No, I haven't watched that show,
Okay.
but there's
Go
similar
do it.
things that I have watched.
You got to watch $6 Million Man. It's Steve Austin, right? It's a show. And he is an astronaut or a space airplane pilot. He crashes, and so he's basically left for dead. It's basically like Darth Vader all over again. But they attach him with this bionic eye, so he is able to see very far. I don't think he has bionic hearing. He might have bionic running, right? So he can run really fast. This is where we're headed towards. I think that Elon made fun of this. He joked around and goes, instead of a $6 million man. Actually, I don't remember which way he went. He thought it could be like a $60 million man, or it could actually be like you were saying earlier.
I think it was less. I think it was the
$6,000
$6,000 man or something.
Because he said the goal is to make, like you said earlier, which is a very good point. The goal is to make this, I'm confusing what you said versus what Tim Urban said, but the goal is to make this something accessible to all humans, not just the rich people.
Yep.
Now, so what's really fun is the combination between what Neuralink is doing and Tesla's Optimus, because now you can have, would you choose to actually amputate your hands and feet and actually have the actual physical, like, you know what I mean? Like, you're going to have human cyborg combinations, because which is better, right?
It gets wild, that's for sure. And I mean, a lot of those, it'll start with people just solving issue like amputees having new, robotic limbs that are the next evolution of what prosthetics are. But from there, you do get into those questions like you're talking about. What about healthy people that want to be able to keep up with the other people who have access to these technologies? And we're going to have to figure that out as a society. It's going to be very interesting.
Okay. So let's bring it back to why he created Neuralink in the first place, not only to help the patients that need this most, and we're talking severely, quadriplegics and ALS and tremendous diseases, but it's going to give superhuman capabilities to humans because you need to combat AI. If you can't beat them, you need to join them, and you need to combine to them and maybe give them the philosophies, right? The kind of make sure that they are, they don't kill humans. They feel like they're one together. So we'll see if that happens. But here we are witnessing history happening in front of our eyes.
One of the other things that I know we kind of moved to AI, but another disease that he's talked about, which is a huge pain point that is an incredibly important thing for us to solve as humanity, that Neuralink gives us some hope for, is actually dementia and Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
That these are very difficult neurological diseases that, my wife has both of her grandmothers had Alzheimer's. And so this is something that has been, part of the story of our family. And it's an incredibly sad and heartbreaking disease. And it's something that we need to use any tools that we have at our disposal to try and improve, because, 100 years from now, people are going to look back and they're not going to understand how was it possible for people to suffer from these types of diseases. And so the sooner that we can make that transition, actually, the better.
All right. I think we should end by talking about it's just unbelievable what Elon Musk, living in our lifetime, is accomplishing. Reusable rockets, and they're basically launching one every 2 days now. You've got, on the way to solve robotaxi. You've got Dojo supercomputers that they're working on as well. And then the robot. I mean, the bot's going to be the biggest thing. And then you got Neuralink. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's amazing what he's contributing to humanity. All right. Thank you so much, Hans. I appreciate this. Follow him on his YouTube channel. Check him out. At Hans C. Nelson. Thanks, everybody. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.